Hello everyone, very good evening to all. I hope the audio, video, everything is fine. So in case any difficulty, kindly let me know. Okay, so welcome to this session where we're going to discuss about most important MCQs for physiology. I'm Dr. Abirami, your original guru for physiology. So let's discuss most important points for your upcoming exam. So in the form of 10 questions, I've framed it from each system wise. So let's do it. So let's start discussing the first question. Which of the following indicates residual volume of the lung? I think it was also a repeat question. This graph is a very important graph. Repeatedly questions are asked from this graph. So this is a graph which gives us information about static lung volumes and capacities. What is static lung volumes and capacities? When you measure lung volumes and capacities just in liters or just in ml, not over time, only in liters or only in ml, that is called static lung volumes and capacities. Then what is the counterpart of this? Dynamic lung volumes and capacities. Dynamic means when you measure it over time, like how many liters in the first second or how many liters in the second, something like that. Over time, if you measure, that is called dynamic lung volumes and capacities. Just only in liters, not over time. That is called static lung volumes and capacities. So let's learn what are the different static lung volumes and capacities. This graph is really tough to remember. So we'll do one thing. As I'm instructing you, if you are able to do this breathing exercise, I can assure you, you will never forget the definitions and also the values. So please do it along with me. As I'm telling you, try to breathe this volume of air. Okay, let's do a tidal volume. What is a tidal volume? A normal breathing. During a normal breathing, how much of air moves inside or how much of air moves out? That is called tidal volume without any effort. Let's do a tidal volume. Yes, please, all of you, do a tidal volume along with me. See, don't do like that. Don't put effort. It becomes an effort breathing. Don't put any effort. Involuntarily, how much of air moves inside or how much of air moves out? See, 500 ml of air moves inside, 500 ml of air moves outside. This is called tidal volume. So what is tidal volume? This small part of the curve indicates tidal volume. This is tidal volume during inspiration. It goes up. Tidal volume during inspiration when it comes down. How much is this? Half a liter or 500 ml. Normally, the tidal volume comes up to 500 ml. 500 ml during inspiration and also 500 ml during expiration. So the normal tidal volume inspiration 500 ml. Normal tidal volume expiration is also 500 ml. So what is tidal volume now? During a normal effortless breathing, how much of air moves in or how much of air moves out? That is called tidal volume. The definition for tidal volume. What is the value of tidal volume? Approximately 500 ml for any individual. It could be plus or minus. It's only approximate value. Now let's do inspiratory reserve volume. At the end of tidal volume, you've taken 500 ml. At the end of tidal volume, now take a deep inspiration. If you take like that, around 2 liters of air moves inside. This is called inspiratory reserve volume. What is the definition for inspiratory reserve volume? At the end of tidal volume inspiration, by a deep inspiration, how much of air you are able to inspire? That is called inspiratory reserve volume. Comes up to 2 liters. So the normal inspiratory reserve volume 2 liters. This pink part of the curve, this is 2 liters. Now let's do expiratory reserve volume. The same way, at the end of tidal volume expiration, by a deep inspiration, if you breathe like that, 1 liter of air moves out, and this is called expiratory reserve volume. at the end of normal tidal expiration, by a deep expiration, how much of air you are able to push out. And this comes up to 1 liters. Inspiratory reserve volume 2 liters, but expiratory reserve volume is only 1 liter. What has happened to the remaining 1 liter? It didn't come out. It stayed inside your lung itself as a residue. So that is called as residual volume, remaining 1 liter, which didn't come out in your breathing cycle. It remained inside the lung itself as a residue. So it becomes the residual volume. So these are the different lung volumes and capacities. Tidal volume 500 ml, inspiratory reserve volume 2 liter, expiratory reserve volume 1 liter, and residual volume of 1 liter. You add all this, it's a total, so it gives us total lung capacity. When you add all this, this is called total lung capacity. It comes up to plus or minus 5 liters. Now what is vital capacity? Of all these volumes, which volume do you think is not vital for us? Whichever is not coming into your breathing cycle is not important for us. So we will leave the one which is not important, which is not coming out. Residual volume is not coming out. So of all these volumes and capacities, if you leave residual volume, it is not important because it is not at all coming out. So you leave the one which is not important, which is not vital. You add all others, it will give you vital capacity. So what is vital capacity? A sum of all volumes except residual volume is called vital capacity. Approximately comes up to 3.5 to 4 liters. So these are the different static lung volumes and capacities. How will you measure all this? What is the technique by which we measure all this? The technique is called spirometry. It's a tube which you put inside your mouth. With a nose clip, you close your nose, you breathe into the tube. The tube is connected to the monitor, and as you breathe into the tube, the monitor will draw the curves for you. This is called spirometry. By spirometry, you can measure all volumes and capacities except one volume. Which is that volume which you cannot measure by using a spirometry? Say in this method, you are breathing into the tube. When you breathe into the tube, which volume does not come out into the breathing cycle? Residual volume. You are not breathing out residual volume. So residual volume is not going into the tube. So residual volume cannot be measured by using a spirometry. So spirometry cannot measure residual volume. There are other two capacities. IC. IC means inspiratory capacity. What is inspiratory capacity? Your total capacity to inspire. What is your total capacity to inspire? You can inspire a tidal volume inspiration. Then you can inspire inspiratory reserve volume. So this is your total capacity to inspire. A tidal volume inspiration plus IRV. So what is inspiratory capacity? Tidal volume plus IRV. This is called IC or inspiratory capacity. There is another capacity, FRC, functional residual capacity. What is functional residual capacity? On the other side, residual volume plus ERV is called FRC. So a spirometry cannot measure residual volume. So a spirometry cannot measure FRC because FRC has residual volume in it. A spirometry cannot measure total lung capacity because total lung capacity also includes residual volume in it. So using a spirometer, you cannot measure residual volume, you cannot measure FRC, you cannot measure TLC. So what is that technique by which you measure residual volume, FRC and TLC? You should use gases which will go into the residual volume and which will move out. So we can use helium, and the technique is called helium dilution method. or we can use nitrogen washout method, or a box like instrument called body plethysmography. It's a box like instrument. You go sit inside the box and you keep breathing, the box will measure the values. That is called body plethysmography. By using these three methods, you can measure residual volume, FRC and TLC. That is about the first question. Which of the following indicates residual volume? So this volume which didn't come out, which is denoted by the option E. So this is the option D. Answer is E. So this is the residual volume. That is about the static lung volumes and capacities. Let's move on to the second question. Two pipes are present. The first pipe has a diameter D and length L. The second pipe has twice the diameter and length of the first pipe. Considering flow is laminar in both the pipes, what will be the flow rate in the second pipe when compared to the first pipe? This is about the Poiseuille-Hagen's law or the Poiseuille's law, which relates the flow in a tube and the size of the tube. There are two blood vessels here, a smaller blood vessel and a larger blood vessel. As you can see, inside a smaller blood vessel, there is only less space inside the smaller blood vessel. So the flow is less. But in a larger blood vessel, there is more space inside. So the flow is more. So smaller the size of the blood vessel, less is the flow. Bigger the size of the blood vessel, more is the flow. So we can say that flow is directly proportional to the size of the tube or the size of the blood vessel. Or to be very exact, flow is directly proportional to the fourth power of radius. This is also only a part of Poiseuille's law. The complete Poiseuille's law is flow is directly proportional to pi into delta P into radius to the power of 4 divided by 8 times viscosity into length of the tube. This is the complete Poiseuille's law. So according to this law, from the given question, if you derive, just see what are the changes that have happened in the second blood vessel. Twice the diameter, so diameter has become 2d and length also has become twice. So diameter has become twice the diameter. It means radius also has doubled. If diameter has doubled, it means radius also has doubled. And length has become 2L. So if we substitute this into the formula, R becomes 2R to the power of 4 and L becomes 2L. Now we have 2 to the power of 4 in the numerator and a 2 in the denominator. All others are same for both the blood vessels. So all others will get cancelled. Pi, delta P, 8, viscosity, all others are same for both the blood vessels. The difference is radius has doubled and length has doubled. R has become 2R and L has become 2L. Other than that, rest are all same. So 2 to the power of 4 in the numerator, which is 16, divided by, there's a 2 in the denominator. Now if you cancel this, 8. So flow has increased by 8 times in the second blood vessel. So option C is the right answer. Flow has increased by 8 times in the second blood vessel. When you twice the diameter and length of the blood vessel, the flow increases by 8 times. This is also an important topic, repeatedly asked concept about Poiseuille-Hagen's law. The third question, Nernst potential of a negatively charged ion, of which in the extracellular compartment is 100 and intracellular compartment is 10 milliequivalent per liter. The question is about derivation of equilibrium potential for ions. How do you derive the equilibrium potential for ions? By using Nernst equation. According to Nernst equation, equilibrium potential for any ion is equal to plus or minus 61 into log of C1 by C2, or concentration of the ion in one compartment divided by concentration of the ion in the other compartment. What are the two compartments? ECF and ICF. This could be ECF by ICF or ICF by ECF, because you're taking a log. Anyway, the answer is going to be same. Log 10 by 1 is also 1. Log 1 by 10 is also 1 only. Since you're taking a log, it could be ICF by ECF or ECF by ICF. Anyways, you're going to get the answer. The value is going to be same only. So we can do this as ICF by ECF or ACF by ICF, or to be more convenient, always put the bigger number on top. Division becomes more easier. So this is the equilibrium potential for any ion by Nernst equation. Let's calculate the equilibrium potential of the major ions. Just an example. See if you are able to do this. In this table, I have given you the values of sodium inside the cell 15 and outside the cell 150, and equilibrium potential is plus 60. How did we get this plus 60? Let's derive the equilibrium potential for sodium is equal to plus or minus 61 into log of C1 by C2. Plus or minus 61 into log of C1, C2 are the two compartments, ICF and ECF, 150 and 15. To make problem easier, let's do the bigger number on top, 150 by 15. So I'll put 150 by 15. So you cancel this, you get plus or minus 61 into log 10. Log 10 is 1. So the answer is plus or minus 61. So you know that it is 61, plus or minus. Now let's determine the sign. How do we determine the sign? Please listen carefully. This is very important here. How do you derive the sign? What is equilibrium potential? Ions will keep on moving until their chemical gradient, electrical gradient both match. At the point where the chemical gradient and electrical gradient matches, the movement of the ion will stop. That is called equilibrium potential. So every ion will run to reach its equilibrium potential. Just see the direction in which the ion is running. Let's take sodium for example. Sodium is 150 outside the cell and 15 inside the cell. Normally itself, sodium is more outside the cell, less inside the cell. Any ion will always move from its higher concentration to its lower concentration. So how will sodium move to reach its equilibrium potential? Sodium will run from its high concentration to its low concentration. So obviously it will run from 150 to 15, which means outside to inside. So sodium is running from outside to inside to reach the equilibrium potential. So in an attempt to reach the equilibrium potential, what charge is sodium adding into the cell? Sodium is a positive ion. It is moving inside. It is adding positivity inside the cell. So the answer is plus 61. In an attempt to reach the equilibrium potential, sodium is running from outside to inside. It is a positive ion. So it is adding positivity inside the cell. So the value is plus 61. Let's do this for potassium. Equilibrium potential for potassium is equal to plus or minus 61 log of C1 by C2. Plus or minus 61 into log of, look at the concentrations of potassium, 150 inside the cell, 5.5 outside the cell, and the value is 90. Equilibrium potential is minus 90. So let's put 150 by 5.5. If I solve this, I will get 90. 90 is the answer. Now let's determine the sign, whether it is plus 90 or minus 90. Potassium. Where is potassium more concentrated? Inside the cell 150, outside the cell 5.5. So how will potassium move in order to reach the equilibrium potential? It will move from inside to outside. Potassium is a positive ion which is moving from inside to outside. So potassium is removing positivity out of the cell. In an attempt to reach the equilibrium potential, potassium is removing positivity from the cell. So it is making the inside negative. So the answer is minus 90. Sodium is adding positivity inside. So the value is plus 61. But potassium moving out is removing positivity out of the cell. It is making the inside negative. Always remember, equilibrium potential is the inside concentration when compared to the outside. Finally, what is happening to inside the cell? That is more important. So sodium is bringing positivity inside the cell. So the value is plus 61. Potassium is removing positivity out of the cell. So the value is minus 90. It is making the inside negative. Let's do this for chloride. Can you try this for chloride? Yes, please apply the same concepts. Equilibrium potential for chloride. Plus or minus 61 into log of C1 by C2. Plus or minus 61 into, look at chloride concentrations, 9 and 125. The answer is minus 70. 125 by 9. If I solve this, I'll get the answer 70. It is plus or minus 70. You have to determine the sign. How do you determine the sign? Just see how will chloride move to reach its equilibrium potential. Inside it is 9 and outside it is 125. All you know that chloride is an anion which is more concentrated outside the cell. How will chloride move to reach its equilibrium potential? Obviously from its higher concentration to its lower concentration, or from outside to inside. So chloride is bringing in negativity inside the cell. So what is the value? Minus 70. So the answer becomes minus 70. Equilibrium potential for chloride, the value is minus 70. Applying the same concept, can we solve this problem now? Nernst potential of a negatively charged ion, extracellular compartment 100, intracellular compartment is 10. So instead of giving you the name of the ion, they have given you that it is a negatively charged ion, outside 100 milliequivalent per liter and inside 10 milliequivalent per liter. Just think, how will this ion move in order to reach the equilibrium potential? Or first you calculate the equilibrium potential. Equilibrium potential is equal to plus or minus 61 into log of C1 by C2. Plus or minus 61 into log of C1, let's take 100, C2 10. You have a log 10 here, log 10 is 1. So equilibrium potential is equal to plus or minus 61 into 1. So that is plus or minus 61. So it is plus or minus 61. Now let's determine whether it is plus or minus. Just think, it is a negatively charged substance which is present more outside the cell. So how will this ion move to reach equilibrium potential? From 100 to 10, or from outside to inside. So it will move like this. So in an attempt to reach equilibrium potential, what charge it is adding to the cell, inside the cell? It is bringing in negativity. So the answer is minus 61. Correct? Yes, the answer is minus 61. You just apply Nernst equation for this question and just think whether the ion is more concentrated outside the cell or inside the cell. Any ion in an attempt to reach its equilibrium potential will run from its higher concentration to its lower concentration. And just see what charge it is adding to the inside of the cell. Whether it is making the inside positive or it is making the inside negative. If it is making the inside positive, the sign is positive. If it is making the inside negative, just put the sign negative. Hope this is clear. Let's move on to the next question, fourth question. Answer, okay, all of the following increases gastric acid secretion except So the answer is C, serotonin. Quickly, let's learn about the mechanism of HCl secretion inside the parietal cell. Inside the parietal cells, CO2 combines with water with the help of carbonic anhydrase. It forms carbonic acid, H2CO3. Carbonic acid splits into H plus and bicarbonate. H plus is secreted into the stomach in exchange for another positive ion, potassium, which moves inside, and this potassium is again recycled back into the stomach. This is the proton pump. This is the proton pump which is functioning here. And proton pump inhibitors, PPI, what is the mechanism of action? They block this proton pump, thereby acid secretion comes down. What are the proton pump inhibitors? Rabiprazole, omeprazole, lansoprazole. All these drugs are called proton pump inhibitors and are used in the treatment of acidity, gastritis or peptic ulcer because they block the proton pump and they decrease the HCl secretion, acid secretion. What is the fate of this bicarbonate? Bicarbonate moves into the blood. Therefore, for every H plus secreted into the stomach, one bicarbonate is added into the blood. So after eating food, H plus is added into the stomach and bicarbonate is added into the blood. So stomach becomes acidic and blood becomes alkaline. This is called postprandial. Postprandial means after eating food, alkaline tide. After eating food, blood becomes alkaline. This is called postprandial alkaline tide. When bicarbonate moves into the blood, in exchange for another anion, chloride, which is secreted into the stomach. Therefore, inside the stomach, you have H plus and chloride. It forms hydrochloric acid. This is the mechanism of HCl secretion. There are three hormones or three neurotransmitters which help in acid secretion: acetylcholine, histamine and gastrin. They three act together to increase HCl secretion. This is called synergism. Synergism means all the three together they act to increase HCl secretion. It means if you block any one of this also, acid secretion will come down. What is the clinical importance? Histamine receptor blockers, H2 blockers. What are the H2 blockers? Ranitidine, cimetidine, famotidine. They are used in the treatment of acidity or peptic ulcer. Yes, if you use H2 blockers and block histamine receptors, you can easily bring down acid secretion. That is why H2 blockers, ranitidine, cimetidine and famotidine are used in the treatment of peptic ulcers. So we see that acetylcholine, histamine and gastrin together they increase gastric acid secretion. So obviously the answer becomes serotonin. All of the following increase gastric acid secretion except serotonin because serotonin decreases gastric acid secretion. All others increase gastric acid secretion whereas serotonin decreases gastric acid secretion. Over to question number 5. Which of the following areas of the brain do these cells have an inhibitory action on? First of all, identify the cells. What are these cells? Can you see big cells where the dendrites are dividing again and again to form multiple branching processes like this? Yes, have you identified the cell? Yes, the cell is the largest cell of the nervous system. Yes, Purkinje cells. The cells that are shown here, they are all Purkinje cells. If the dendrites are showing multiple dendritic pattern like this, easily you can identify the cell as Purkinje cells. So this is a Purkinje cell. So the question is about the Purkinje cells. Purkinje cells of the cerebellum. Let's learn about the Purkinje cells of the cerebellum. First of all, an overall view about the cerebellum. Cerebellum is divided into cerebrocerebellum, which helps in planning of movements, spinocerebellum, which helps in coordination of movements, and vestibulocerebellum, which helps in balance and equilibrium, and also eye movements. These are the three parts of the cerebellum: cerebrocerebellum, spinocerebellum, and vestibulocerebellum. Vestibulocerebellum is made up of nodulus and flocculus, and that is why vestibulocerebellum is otherwise called flocculonodular lobe, or the ancient part of cerebellum, flocculonodular lobe. Cerebellum has an outer cortex and inner deep nucleus. The outer cortex has 5 types of cells in it, and deep inside there are nuclei of cerebellum. There are 4 deep nuclei of cerebellum. How these 5 cells are connected to the 4 deep nucleus? This is called the cerebellar connection. Very complicated connection, but I'll teach you a very simple method to learn the connections of the cerebellum. How these 5 cells of the cerebellum are connected to the deep nucleus. Very, very important. Listen carefully. Let's learn this connection. Before that, what are the deep nuclei? Yes, what are the 4 deep nuclei? What is the mnemonic? Doctors eat good food. From outside to inside. What is doctors eat good food? D for dentate nucleus. E for emboliform nucleus. G for globose. And F for fastigial. D, E, G, F. From outer to inner. Outermost is dentate, then emboliform, then globose, innermost is fastigial. So these are the 4 deep nucleus of the cerebellum. Now let's see how the 5 cells in the cortex are connected to the 4 deep nucleus inside. This is called the connections of the cerebellum. Very complicated connection. So let me give you a small comparison and we'll do this. So you sit back and listen to the story first. Then you can correlate the changes. Let's learn this with the help of a story. I'll tell you a small story. Once upon a time, there was a deep nuclear family, and grandpa was taking care of the family. This grandpa had 4 grandsons, and all these 4 grandsons, they entered medical colleges, but by different modes. The first grandson, he entered medical college in general category GC. The other grandson in BC category, the other in SC, and one who did not get in any of the government college went to private college PC. The grandpa is so good that whatever positive he has, he will give it equally to his grandsons. See, he gives plus, 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 and plus. The grandpa is so good that he gives all his positives equally to his grandsons. But these grandsons are very bad. This first boy is very, very bad because he gets plus from the grandpa and he is inhibiting the grandpa itself. This is like backstabbing, no? Getting plus from the grandpa, inhibiting the grandpa itself. This is called feedback inhibition. Feedback inhibition. The other 2 boys, BC and SC, they don't have guts to go back on the grandpa. So they are going forward and inhibiting this boy PC. So they are also inhibiting, but they are going forward on PC. So this is called feed forward inhibition. And this boy PC, he doesn't know what to do. He is inhibiting the whole family. Although so much of confusions are going on inside the family as such, it gets plus from outside, and in turn also it gives back plus. It is getting plus from outside. It is also giving back plus. This is the cerebellar connection. Now let's correlate with the cerebellum. Grandpa cell, which is that cell which sounds like gran in the cerebellum. Yes, granule cell. So this grandpa is granule cell. And GC, Golgi cell. BC, basket cell. SC, stellate cell. And PC, Purkinje cell. PC, Purkinje cell. What is this deep nuclear family? The deep nucleus, the 4 deep nuclei. Not only is the deep nucleus, 4 deep nuclei: dentate, emboliform, globose, and fastigial. Now see if you are able to correlate few points on cerebellar connections. This is the cerebellar connection diagram. See, granule cell, Golgi cell, basket cell, stellate cell, Purkinje cell. 5 cells of the cerebellar cortex. How they are connected to the deep nucleus. This is the cerebellar connection. Let me give you a few important points from the cerebellar connection. First point, of all the cells in the cerebellar cortex, granule cell is the only excitatory cell. See, granule gives plus everywhere. All other cells are inhibitory. So of all the cells in the cerebellum, granule cell is the only excitatory cell. First point. Second point, Golgi cell inhibits granule cell. This is called feedback inhibition. Golgi cell inhibits granule cell. This is called feedback inhibition. Third point, basket cell and stellate cell inhibit Purkinje cell. This is called feed forward inhibition. Basket cell and stellate cell inhibit Purkinje cell. This becomes feed forward inhibition. Purkinje cell, fourth point, Purkinje cell is the net inhibitory connection between all the cells in the cerebellum and the deep nucleus. Purkinje cell is the net inhibitory connection between all the cells in the cerebellum and the deep nucleus. Fifth point, the net inputs into the cerebellum are excitatory. The net output is also excitatory. These are all important points from cerebellar connections. Yes. If you have missed the points, you can anyway go back and watch the video again and take down the points. Now back to the question. Which of the following areas of the brain do these cells have an inhibitory action on? We identify the cells as Purkinje cell. Purkinje cell has inhibitory action on deep nucleus. The answer is deep nucleus. Option D, deep nucleus. Cerebellum, very important part, especially for INI-CT exams. Cerebellum is an important topic. Please concentrate. Question number 6. Right shift of oxygen dissociation curve is seen in all except. Answer is option D, fetal hemoglobin. Quickly, let's learn about oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Then we'll come back to the question. This is the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. This is a normal curve. In any normal curve, let's trace the normal curve first. Partial pressure of oxygen on x-axis in millimeter of mercury. Percentage oxygen saturation of hemoglobin. It means hemoglobin is how much saturated with oxygen. That is on the y-axis. Let's correlate few normal values. This is a normal graph. When PO2 is 100 millimeter of mercury, it means when partial pressure of oxygen in the blood is 100, look at the saturation. Saturation is almost 100% or it is around 97%. So when PO2 is 100, hemoglobin is 97% saturated with oxygen. That is a known value. I'll mark it on the graph. When PO2 is 100, it almost marks to 97% saturation. If PO2 falls from 100 to 60, see what happens to saturation. Saturation falls to 90%. It means when partial pressure of oxygen becomes 60 millimeter of mercury, hemoglobin is 90% saturated with oxygen. and this is called as safety factor. Why is it called safety factor? Even though PO2 falls from 100 to 60, 100 to 60 is a drastic decrease. Even though your partial pressure falls from 100 to 60, saturation is only falling from 97 to 90. So even if your PO2 falls to 60 millimeter of mercury, your body will be able to maintain 90% saturation, and that is why this becomes safety factor. A further fall in PO2 to 27 millimeter of mercury. See what has happened to saturation. Saturation has fallen to 50%. It means when PO2 is 27 millimeter of mercury, hemoglobin is 50% saturated with oxygen. These are all normal values. Even without giving the curve, they can ask you all these values. And 27 millimeter of mercury is called as P50. What is P50? The partial pressure at which 50% saturation happens. Partial pressure at which there is 50% saturation. What is the value of P50? 27 millimeter of mercury. These are all normal values. This is a normal curve. This curve can be shifted to the right like this, or it can be shifted to the left like this. Right shift and left shift of the curve. What are the abnormal shifts in the curve? First, let's see right shift of the curve. When the curve shifts to the right like this, this is right shift of the curve. R for right shift and R for release of oxygen to tissues. So whenever there is a need to release oxygen to the tissues, curve shifts to the right. Right shift. When there is a need for the tissue oxygen, when will the tissue need oxygen? When the tissue is in hypoxia. So one factor which can cause right shift of the curve, hypoxia. Or when you do exercise, the exercising tissue needs oxygen. So there is a need to release oxygen to the tissues. Hypoxia, exercise, or other factors which cause right shift of the curve. Right means something good, something positive. So we will put all positive factors. Increase in H plus, increase in CO2, increase in temperature, and increase in 2,3-BPG, 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate. This is an intermediate product of glycolysis. Increase in H plus, CO2, temperature, or 2,3-BPG. All this can cause a right shift of the curve. So these are the factors which cause right shift of the curve. And this right shift is called as Bohr effect. R for Bohr effect. R for right shift. R for release of oxygen to tissue. R for Bohr effect. Now what about the left shift of the curve? This is left shift of the curve. Left for tissues left without oxygen. So when the curve shifts to the left, it means the tissues are left without oxygen. It means the tissue is not getting oxygen. So where is all the oxygen? Hemoglobin is holding all the oxygen. It is not giving it to the tissue. So hemoglobin oxygen affinity is more. In left shift, tissues are left without oxygen. Tissue is not getting oxygen. It means all the oxygen is with hemoglobin itself. Hemoglobin oxygen affinity is more in left shift. And what about the right shift? Oxygen is released to the tissues in the right shift. It means oxygen is removed from hemoglobin, released to the tissue. So oxygen hemoglobin affinity decreases in right shift. Hemoglobin oxygen affinity is less in right shift, whereas hemoglobin oxygen affinity is more in left shift. What are the factors which cause left shift? Left means something negative. Left, negative. So we'll put all decreasing factors. Decrease in H plus, decrease in CO2, decrease in temperature, and decrease in 2,3-BPG, 2,3-bisphosphoglycerate. Other factors which can decrease 2,3-BPG, fetal hemoglobin and stored blood. This also can cause a left shift of the curve. Fetal hemoglobin is made up of gamma chains. Gamma chains have a more excuse me. Fetal hemoglobin and stored blood can cause a left shift of the curve. So this is about the right shift and left shift of the curve and the factors which can cause right shift and left shift. Please remember, an increase in H plus means acid is increasing, acidosis. So acidosis is a factor which can cause right shift. Decrease in H plus means alkalosis. So alkalosis is a factor which can cause left shift. So remember, increase H plus acidosis, right shift. Decrease H plus alkalosis, left shift. There is a double Bohr effect which happens at the level of placenta. Placenta is one organ which has fetal side and mother side. How does the fetus breathe? The fetus will breathe CO2 into the mother. Fetus pushes CO2 into the mother. So on the mother side, CO2 increases because the mother is receiving CO2. But on the fetal side, CO2 decreases because fetus is breathing CO2 into the mother. Mother side CO2 increases. CO2 increasing causes right shift of the ODC curve. On the fetal side, CO2 decreasing causes left shift of the ODC curve. See, placenta is one single organ which has right shift on one side and left shift on the other side. This is called double Bohr effect. Double Bohr effect happens at the level of placenta. Double Bohr effect. Yes, hope oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve is clear now. Right shift of the curve is seen in increased 2,3 ppg acidosis, increased CO2. Fetal hemoglobin, this causes left shift, not right shift. The answer is option D, fetal hemoglobin. Question number 7. Pacinian corpuscles can detect which of the following? Answer is pressure. The question is about the tactile receptors. What are the tactile receptors? Tactile means touch, pressure and vibration. There are 4 tactile receptors based on the anatomy, whether they are located superficially on the epidermis or deep inside the dermis. Superficially on the epidermis, there are 2 receptors, Meissner and Merkel. Meissner corpuscles and Merkel corpuscles. Deep inside the dermis, there are 2 receptors, Ruffini and Pacinian. What do they sense? Meissner, SS, there are 2 S. SS for soft sense. Soft sense means fine touch. Example, textures. When your cloth is touching you, that is a fine touch, soft sense. So Meissner senses soft sense, SS, soft sense, fine touch. Example, textures. Merkel, K for crude touch. K for crude touch. What is crude touch? Points, edges, corners, elevations, ridges, or this is crude touch. K for crude touch. Merkel senses crude touch. R for Ruffini. R for rotation of joints. It can sense rotation of joints. And R for response to stretch. R for rotation of joints. R for response to stretch. Pacinian, P for pressure, deep pressure. Pacinian can sense pressure, especially deep pressure. What about vibrations? Vibrations also Pacinian, vibrations of 30 to 800 Hertz. Most of the vibrations are 30 to 800 Hertz only. So vibration means Pacinian. Very rarely you have vibrations less than 30 Hertz which are sensed by Meissner. but very rarely you will have vibrations less than 30 Hz. So vibration means Pacinian only. Specifically, vibration less than 30 Hz or low, very low frequency vibration means. Otherwise, vibration means Pacinian. So Pacinian, P for pressure and also vibrations. Back to the question, Pacinian corpuscles can detect P for pressure. Yes, the answer is option A, pressure. Over to the 8th question. Isovolumetric contraction leads to which wave of the internal jugular vein? The question is about JVP. What is JVP? Jugular venous pressure or jugular venous pulse. What is jugular venous pulse? The jugular veins, they directly drain into the right atrium. The internal jugular vein directly drains into the right atrium. If you want to measure the pressure in the right atrium, an indirect method is measuring the pressure in the internal jugular vein. So jugular venous pressure is an indirect measure of right atrial pressure. Just remember, JVP means right atrial pressure. It is a measure of right atrial pressure. How do you measure this? Put the patient in 45-degree inclination in good sunlight. Turn the head to the left side. On the right side, if JVP is elevated, you can see the elevated waves coming up. Using two scales. One scale is placed on the sternal angle and the second scale is placed at the point where you see the pulsations, the highest point where you see the pulsation, and you match both the scale like this. And you measure this distance from the sternal angle. It is normally 4 centimeter from the sternal angle. So normal JVP is 4 centimeter from the sternal angle. If it is more than 4 centimeter from the sternal angle, then you call it as elevated JVP. So we are giving this measurement as 4 centimeter from sternal angle. Heart is deep inside the chest wall. What is JVP? Measure of right atrial pressure. So you have to give JVP as how much it is from the right atrium exactly. You cannot give from sternal angle. Approximately you can say 4 centimeter from sternal angle, but accurately you should say how much it is from the right atrium. So the right atrium is at a distance of 5 centimeter from the sternal angle deep inside. So to exactly say how much is JVP from the right atrium, you should add another 5 centimeter to this 4 centimeter. 4 centimeter from sternal angle, but heart is at a distance of 5 centimeter from the sternal angle deep inside. So when you add 4 centimeter plus 5 centimeter, you give this value as 9 centimeter from the right atrium. Two ways of giving JVP. 4 centimeter from sternal angle is also correct, or 9 centimeter from the right atrium itself is also correct. These are the two ways how you give JVP. You can also connect this to a monitor using electrodes and you can record the waves. You can draw the waves. So these are the waves of the JVP. A wave, C wave, X wave, V wave and the Y wave. What do they indicate? Very easy way of understanding this is JVP is a measure of right atrial pressure. So you remember the waves of JVP by correlating only to the atrial events, because JVP is a measure of atrial pressure. So A wave in JVP indicates A for atrial contraction. When atrium is contracting, A wave. C wave in JVP indicates C for tricuspid bulge. When tricuspid valve is bulging, you get the C wave. C for tricuspid bulge. When will the tricuspid valve bulge? When both AV valve and the aortic valves are closed. See, when you say that tricuspid valve is bulging, it means both the important valves are closed. There is no outlet for the ventricles. When there is no outlet for the ventricles, when the blood is not able to move out, the valve is going to bulge. sorry, not the, I'm sorry, not the AV valves and the aortic valve, it's on the right side. It's our AV valve and the pulmonary valves. When both AV valves and the pulmonary valves are closed, the volume inside the ventricle cannot change. So this becomes isovolumetric contraction phase. During isovolumetric contraction phase, when both the valves are closed but pressure in the ventricle is rising, this is bulging the valve. So this tricuspid bulge happens during isovolumetric contraction phase. When will the valve bulge? During isovolumetric contraction phase. What is isovolumetric contraction phase? Isovolumetric means volume in the ventricle is not changing. When the volume in the ventricle will not change? When both tricuspid valve and the pulmonary valve is closed. There is no outlet. There is no way for outlet because both the valves are closed. It becomes isovolumetric phase. During this phase, contraction, pressure is rising. Therefore, the tricuspid valve bulges. So, C wave is seen during tricuspid bulge or isovolumetric contraction phase. X wave is seen in X for atrial relaxation. V wave is seen in V for atrial venous filling. Y wave in JVP, Y for atrial emptying. So just correlate the waves of JVP to atrial events. Don't confuse with ventricular events here. We are talking only about atrial events. A for atrial contraction, C for tricuspid bulge, X for atrial relaxation, V for atrial venous filling, and Y for atrial emptying. Back to the question. Isovolumetric contraction leads to, yes, tricuspid bulge, which is C wave in the JVP. Question number 9. Maximum resistance to air flow is in which of the following airways? So when we learn about the airways, the resistance is high in the medium-sized bronchi. When you compare with terminal bronchioles, medium-sized bronchi have high resistance. We'll understand the reason for this. Medium-sized bronchi and terminal bronchioles. Terminal bronchioles have maximum smooth muscles. If they have maximum smooth muscles, they should offer more resistance. But actually, resistance is low here because terminal bronchioles are connected in parallel connection. Since they are connected in, when the bronchioles are dividing again and again, they go in parallel connections. When they go in parallel connection, 1 by total resistance is equal to 1 by R1 plus 1 by R2. Total resistance decreases. But medium-sized bronchi, even though smooth muscle is not as much as in terminal bronchioles, they are connected in series connection. In series connection, total resistance R is equal to R1 plus R2. You just add the resistances, you get the total resistance. So total resistance is equal to R1 plus R2. So total resistance is more in medium-sized bronchi because of the series connection. In series connection, total resistance is more. So where do you see the maximum resistance? In medium-sized bronchi because of the series connection. Maximum resistance to airflow is in medium-sized bronchi. Question number 10, the last question. Which of the following is present in the lung alveoli? Just an understanding about the conducting zone and the respiratory zone. Only then you will be able to understand these cells. A person called V. Bell, he only classified the respiratory zones as 0 to 23, the first 16 generations and 17 to 23. The first 16 generations, the trachea, bronchi and bronchioles, there is no alveoli here. Since there is no alveoli, no respiration can take place. It means no gas exchange can take place. Then what is the use of this air? It is only in conducting space. It is just conducting the air inside. So this space becomes conduction zone. All of us have a conduction zone of 150 ml. Actually, there is no use of this space because it is not taking part in gas exchange. It is not doing respiration. So it's a waste of air. You can call it as a dead space or anatomical dead space. Anatomically, trachea and bronchi are meant only for conduction, not for gas exchange. So all of us have an anatomical dead space of 150 ml. All of us have trachea and bronchi. So all of us have an anatomical dead space of 150 ml. Deep inside 17 to 23, where you have the alveoli, actual gas exchange takes place here only. Respiration takes place from 17 to 23 only. So this zone becomes the respiratory zone. Respiratory zone. This respiratory zone is made up of different types of cells. Type 1 pneumocyte, type 2 pneumocyte and dust cells. Type 1 pneumocyte, they help in gas exchange. Type 2 pneumocyte, they produce surfactant, and dust cells, they are the macrophages. They help in immunity, macrophages. This is about the respiratory zone. So type 1 pneumocytes and type 2 pneumocytes are present in the respiratory zone. What about this conduction zone? What are the cells that are present in the conduction zone? The conduction zone is made up of goblet cells, which produce mucus, epithelial cells, endothelial cells, Kulchitsky cells, stem cells and brush cells. All these cells are present in the conducting zone, whereas type 1 pneumocyte, type 2 pneumocyte and dust cells are present deep inside the respiratory zone. Now back to the question. Which of the following is present in the lung alveoli? Alveoli means the question is about the respiratory zone. What are the cells present in the respiratory zone? Type 1 pneumocyte and type 2 pneumocyte, both B and D. Kulchitsky goblet cells and endothelial cells are present in the conduction zone, not in the respiratory zone. Yes, with this, we complete our discussion of most important MCQs for physiology. So hope it was a useful discussion. So when you go for your exam, please keep this mantra in mind. Read one time, but revise at least 3 times. Every time you keep revising for your exam, your brain is converting short-term memories of your subjects into long-term memories. Please do that. Don't allow your subjects to fade away as short-term memory. If you just read everything and go for the exam, it will fade away as short-term memory. Please convert it into long-term memory. How will you convert short-term memory into long-term memory? Revising again and again. Don't keep on reading new things just before the day you go for your exam. Don't keep on reading new things. That is not of use. Keep on revising whatever you have learnt already. Take back your notes, go through the notes. And the other thing that you can do is, when you keep solving questions from any question bank, keep bookmarking the ones that you get wrong. Every time you get a topic wrong or a question wrong, please mark that, the star, or if it's an app or something, please bookmark it. And just the day before your exam, just revise only the bookmarked questions or the bookmarked topics. Only go through the answers and explanations for the bookmarked ones. Don't keep revising whatever you know again and again. Revise the one which goes wrong again and again. So all these are some of the tips which might help you to get to your exams. My best wishes to all of you to get to your exams, to get high scores and come out with flying colors. Yes, thank you all of you. Good night to all. In case you have any doubt, please post in the comment box. I'll do clarify that. Thank you all.